Once upon a time there was a king who had 12 daughters, each one more beautiful than the next. They slept together in one room where their beds stood next to each other. At night, when they were lying there, the king closed their door and barred it. However, when he opened it the next morning, he saw that their shoes had all been danced to pieces. No one could determine how it had happened. The king then proclaimed that whoever could discover where they went dancing each night could choose one of them for his wife and become king after his death. However, any man who attempted this but failed to make the discovery after 3 days and 3 nights would forfeit his life. A prince soon presented himself, offering to undertake the venture. He was well received, and that evening was taken to a room adjacent to the bedroom. A bed was made for him there, and he was told to watch where they went and where they danced. So that they would not be able to do anything in secret or go out to some other place, the door to their room was left open. However, the prince's eyes felt as heavy as lead, and he fell asleep. When he awoke the next morning, the 12 had been dancing, for their shoes all had holes in their soles. The same thing happened on the second, and then again on the third evening, and, having failed to make a discovery, his head was chopped off without mercy. Many others came to try this risky venture, but they too all lost their lives. Now it happened that a poor soldier, who was wounded and could no longer serve in the army, was making his way to the city where the king lived. An old woman met him and asked him where he was going. "I'm not exactly sure myself," he said, then jokingly added, "but I would like to discover where the princesses are dancing their shoes to pieces, and then become king." "That is not so difficult," said the old woman. "Do not drink the wine that they will bring you in the evening." Then she gave him a cloak and said, "When you put this on, you will become invisible, and you can follow the 12. Having received this good advice, the soldier became serious, took heart, went to the king, and announced himself as a suitor. He, like the others, was well received and was given royal clothes to wear. That evening at bedtime he was escorted to the anteroom. Just as he was going to bed, the oldest princess brought him a goblet of wine. However, he had tied a sponge beneath his chin and let the wine run into it, drinking not a single drop himself. He lay down and after a little while began to snore, as if he were in the deepest of sleeps. The 12 princesses heard him and laughed. The oldest one said, "He could have spared his life as well." Then they got up, opened their wardrobes, chests, and closet, took out their best clothes, and made themselves beautiful in front of their mirrors, all the time jumping about in anticipation of the dance. Only the youngest one said, "I'm not sure. You are all very happy, but I'm afraid that something bad is going to happen." "Oh, you snow goose," said the oldest one. "You're always afraid. Have you forgotten how many princes have been here for nothing? I wouldn't even have had to give this soldier a sleeping potion. He would have never woken up." When they were ready, they first approached the soldier, but he did not move at all. And as soon as they thought it was safe, the oldest one went to her bed and knocked on it. It immediately sank beneath the floor, and they all climbed down through the opening, one after the other, the oldest one leading the way. The soldier saw everything, and, without hesitating, he put on his cloak and followed after the youngest one. Halfway down the stairs he stepped on her dress. Frightened, she called out, "Who's there? Who is holding my dress?" "Oh, don't be stupid," said the oldest one. "You just caught yourself on a hook." They continued until they came to a magnificent walkway between rows of trees. Their leaves were all made of silver, and they shone and glistened. The soldier thought to himself, "You'd better take some proof," and he broke off a twig. A loud, cracking sound came from the tree. The youngest one called out again, "It's not right. Didn't you hear that sound?" The oldest one said, "That is just a joyful salute that they are firing, because soon we will have disenchanted our princes." They continued on until they came to a walkway where the trees were all made of gold. He broke off a twig again. The cracking sound frightened the youngest one, but the oldest one insisted that it was only the sounds of joyful salutes. They continued on until they came to a walkway where the trees were made of clear diamonds. He broke a twig from it yet again. The cracking sound frightened the youngest, but the oldest one insisted that it was only the sounds of the greeting crowd. Finally, they reached a large body of water. 12 boats were there, and in each boat sat a handsome prince waiting for them. Each prince took a princess into his boat. The soldier sat next to the youngest princess, and her prince said, "I don't know why the boat is so much heavier today. I have to row with all my strength in order to make it go." "It must be the warm weather," said the youngest princess. "It's too hot for me as well." On the other side of the water there was a beautiful, brightly illuminated castle. Joyful music, kettle drums, and trumpets sounded forth. They rode over and went inside. Each prince danced with his princess, and the invisible soldier danced along as well. And whenever a princess held up a goblet of wine, he drank it empty as she lifted it to her mouth. This always frightened the youngest one, but the oldest one silenced her every time. They danced there until 3 o'clock the next morning, when their shoes were danced to pieces, and they finally had to stop. The princes rowed them back across the water, and this time the soldier took a seat next to the oldest princess in the lead boat. They took leave from their princes on the bank and promised to come back the next night. While they were on the steps, the soldier ran ahead and got into bed. When the 12 tired princesses came in slowly, he was again snoring so loudly that they all could hear him. "We are safe from him," they said. They then took off their beautiful clothes and their worn-out shoes and went to bed. The next morning the soldier said nothing, for he wanted to see the amazing thing once again. He went along on the second and third nights, with everything happening just as before. Every night they danced until their shoes were in pieces, and the third time he took along a goblet as another piece of evidence. The hour came when he was to give his answer to the king, and he brought forth the 3 twigs and the goblet he had taken. The 12 princesses stood behind the door listening to what he had to say. The king asked, "Where did my daughters dance their shoes to pieces?" "In an underground castle with 12 princes," the old soldier answered. He then told the story and brought forth each piece of evidence in turn. The king summoned his daughters and asked them if the soldier had told the truth. Seeing that they had been betrayed and that their denials would do no good, they had to admit everything. The king asked which one he wanted for a wife. "I myself am no longer young," he said, "so give me the oldest one." Their wedding was held that same day, and the kingdom promised to him following the old king's death.